some support there. So let's start with Mr. Panagiotis Tsagarakis and the workshop titled Personalized Immersive Soundscapes Supporting Children with ADHD. Please.
Thank you very much. Well, here we are, I think. Absolutely. I will, don't worry. Well, I would like to welcome you all in this morning session for the workshops, and thank you very much for the opportunity to present my work. This is a research for I completed through my PhD at York University. My name is Tsagarakis, and my work is on personalized immersive soundscapes supporting children with ADHD. I know that we have engineers among us, some musicians and sound artists, biologists. I don't know if there are any participants with psychology, cognitive. No. The reason for that is my work is based on multidisciplinary research and collecting and drawing knowledge among these fields. For the main, 1 second, excuse me, here. The purpose of the work was to utilize soundscapes as an environmental stimulation serving as a direct therapeutic intervention for children with ADHD. So today I'll talk a little bit about why ADHD, why was it selected, the elements from acoustic ecology that I borrowed, and how I create the personalized approach on soundscape, a few things about the experiment design and the final outcomes. Now, ADHD is a prevalent neurodevelopmental disorder affecting children and adolescents throughout the world. It is characterized by symptoms of inattention, hyperactivity, and impulsivity, affecting their everyday life and also the academic performances. It is also an emotional disorder, causing significant impairments in their relationships with parents, teachers, and peers. Now, while the exact cause of the ADHD is unknown, it is believed that it involves a combination of genetic and also environmental factors. The genetic research is on ADHD focused on the neurotransmitter systems involved in the regulation of adrenaline that enhances the sensory perception and also promotes a state of arousal. The dopamine that is mostly associated with motor activation, executive control, and also functions in the prefrontal cortex, and also serotonin that is associated with the control of inhibition and also change of mood. Now, looking at the effect of the environmental factors, the dynamic contextual theory model emphasizes that executive dysfunction in the specific individuals is a dynamic process that is based on the variability of the content, on the context, the circumstances, and the environment. Now, the extended work of Sutherland and Sikstrom showed that by adding auditory noise in the environment helps to improve the cognitive performance of children with ADHD, and more specific, it showed that improved the memory, functionality, and also arithmetic processes. Now, the positive effect of the noise, of the additional noise, it is explained through the phenomenon of stochastic resonance, which states that by adding noise to a weak signal, it improves the quality of the signal, and thus it makes it easier to be transmitted and also to be detected by the system. Also, Sutherland and Stickstrom, they presented that the state of ADHD individuals are understimulated, and also by adding external stimulation, they reach an optimum performance. But if there is overstimulation, additional stimulation, then the stimulation becomes a distractor where the performance deteriorates. Now, my work is built on the idea of soundscapes, which is introduced in the field of acoustic ecology, and involves both the analysis and the synthesis of sonic environments. Now, acoustic ecology framework emphasizes the creation and also the preservation of the high fidelity environments where sounds are clear and distinct, allowing for a deep connection with natural environments. Now, this is a key concept in the therapeutic soundscapes, where which use the restorative qualities of these sound environments, natural environments, to positively impact human health and well-being. Now, this aligns with theories from psychology, such as the attention restoration therapy theory, by the Kaplans, and also the stress reduction theory by Ulrich, that they state that the exposure and interaction in the natural environments helps the individual to improve mental function, attention, and also reduce stress. Now, acoustic ecology framework differentiates between between sound as any auditory phenomenon, and also noise as the unwanted sound. So this suggests that the perception of noise can be subjective and also context dependent. An example of this could be in a park, in a forest, when we hear the birds chirping. This can be a very relaxing scenario, but at the same time, if someone is working, these sounds can be annoying. So noise goes beyond the quantity, the loudness, and also considers the quality of the sound. And the quality obviously includes the timbral characteristics of the sound, but also it includes the information communicated through the sound. And an example of this is, I could say, is a music concert where people enjoying themselves in high sound pressure levels, but at the same time, some others might not enjoy the specific music genre. Now, let's put all the things together. From ADHD, we know that the external stimulation is required to improve the performance. We know that white noise enhances cognitive response. From the acoustic ecology, the use of natural environments for therapeutic purpose is validated, and also that the distinction between sound and noise is subjective and preference-based. So this led to the hypothesis that a controlled, personalized environment, auditory environment, could positively influence the cognitive and behavioral performance of children with ADHD. Now, I'll jump straight to the personalized soundscape. So this was one of the main challenges I had to face to introduce an innovative approach on noise therapy. So I want to find a way to combine different sounds, different content, but also at the same time retain the therapeutic qualities of the noise therapy. So I thought, what if I invite the participants to select 3 different sounds, and then what would be the process to to match the spectral characteristics of these three sounds to white noise or pink noise, which are used. So then I said, okay, what would be the relative gains of this sound in order to produce the flattest possible spectral response when the sounds are combined? So with this in mind, I selected natural sounds, fire, rain, stream, and then I separated them according to the spectral characteristics, so low, mid, and high frequency bands, so these three sound bands. All the recordings were first and third order ambisonics. And then I developed an algorithm in MATLAB where by selecting any sound from each category, from each sound band, I analyze in 1/3 octave bands, and then I pass it through the least square nonlinear function, where every time every iteration it tries different set of gains in order to minimize the loss function, which in my case it was a standard deviation. So the sequence iterate many times until you find the best gains to minimize the standard deviation. As we can see in the graph, we see low, mid, and high frequency, so blue, orange, and red. And we have the purple, which is the non-optimized, and the green, which is the flattened response. The output of this process was a lookup table. So I ran all possible combinations, triplets of sound, one from each bank, and the algorithm created the optimized gains. Then I invited the participants to select a sound from the one from each band, and every time we selected, the super collider looked at the table and applied the relative gains. Great. So now the experiment design was split in two distinct studies. On the first study, I investigated the sound content. So I looked at the silence. There were three sound conditions. So the first one was the silence, serving as a baseline. Then I investigated the personalized soundscapes in dual mono, and also I investigated compared with the pink noise. The second study aimed to investigate the spatial reproduction and also interactivity. How much, if they introduce distraction, that's what I had in mind. And so in this case, I evaluated the personalized soundscape, but this time in third order ambisonic, binaural, and also the same personalized soundscapes, but this time with integrated auditory cues. Just to explain this last bit. So what I said is every time the participants looked away plus minus 25 degrees from the screen, a sound appeared in the contralateral ear, drawing the attention towards the center of the screen. So kind of an indicator. So that was the idea. But also I want to investigate if these sounds coming in and out is a distraction. Participants, 36 participants from both Greece and UK, age group of between 8 and 14 years old, formed the two groups, the focus group, the ADHD group, and the typically developed children group, the control group. Great. So how did I measure the cognitive performance? I used the Connors continuous performance task, which is a task based on go-no-go paradigm. I created a gamified version of it, which I implemented in Unity, controlled by Super Collider, and the instruction was respond every time you see a target, hold your response every time you see the mushroom, hence save the mushroom. And from this, I measured the responses. I'll explain in a second. Now, moving on, The method for measuring the behavioral response, I use the mouse, that's Y position, and also the head movement using the Bluetooth head tracker, where I measured the pitch, roll, yaw angle. So this is a synopsis of the dependent variable. So I'm referring to the cognitive response to the gamified PPT, behavioral response, head and hand movement. And I measured the hit response time, omission errors, commission errors, and so on and so forth. On the right-hand side, we see the symptoms and how they are attached to different metrics. So, for example, impulsivity is supported by the commission errors and preservation errors. Key findings. Now, personalized soundscapes have a significant positive cognitive impact in terms of improved attention, as we can see in the decreased values of the standard deviation and also coefficient of variability. And then also we see some improvement in the hand movement, which suggests improvement in the behavioral response. In both of them in the ADHD group. Looking at the binaural reproduction, we see decreased values, improvement in the commission errors, and also we see an improvement in increased detectability between targets and non-targets, which are associated both with the improvement of impulsivity. Now, the cognitive improvements were found to encourage a tendency of the participants towards accuracy over speed for both groups. So that means that the response time were a bit increased, but at the same time, you see that the accuracy of the responses were higher. Now, when we compare in the comparison between binaural and dual mono reproduction, the ADHD group indicated that the binaural soundscapes did not introduce distraction, highlighting their potential as an effective audio rendering method in the ADHD context. Now, looking at the integrated digital cues, we see improvement in attention, which suggesting improvement in attention as observed from the reduced omission errors, but also we see some mixed results. So, in hyperactivity and impulsivity, we see improvement in the hand movement, but we see an increase in the head movement, suggesting that when the sounds actually appeared, the participants move the head more. And also we see some irregularities in the impulsivity with improved commission errors, but increased preservation errors. Preservation errors are the error, the responses less than 100 milliseconds, which is more due to accidental or but without thinking. This outcome suggests that the possibility of the auditory cues introduce possible distraction. A thought on that is that when we introduce complexity in the content or in the sound reproduction, it requires more familiarization from the participants and also information beforehand, so they don't conceive it as a type of a game. The study highlighted the importance of personalized content, enhancing soundscapes immersive quality and also the therapeutic efficacy, and also it was used as a cross-cultural tool. Finally, while the focus of the research was on the children with ADHD, the study also found pronounced cognitive improvements in the typically developed children exposed at the same soundscape, suggesting the broader potential of these interventions. I would like to close in just to great thanks to KP Acoustics for sponsoring the research. Kate Wilson, which was the link to the psychology to the Trinity Academy, and Agela Muyer, clinical psychology in the Παιδιά and Οικογένεια, who helped me recruit children. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Tsagarakis. So, any questions? By the way, συγγνώμη, μήπως έχουμε ένα μικρόφωνο να δίνουμε για ερωτήσεις στο κοινό? Yeah, because we're recording with
Okay.
Yeah. Thank you.
1, 2, 1, 2. Okay. Thank you.
Yes.
It's not going to be a real question. It's going to be a remark. It's okay. And I'm sorry because it can be maybe a odd remark. I wanted to know about your relation to acoustic ecology, because to my mind, what you presented is the opposite of what acoustic ecology told us.
Yes.
And continues to tell us. To my mind, what acoustic ecology gave us is an attention to listening and not to sound. It's an attention to the environment as it is and not an environment as it could be or something we control and design. It's something about going outside, listening to what we don't want to hear, and to develop a practice of listening outside to meet, to encounter the world. Yeah. What you're presenting is actually something which goes indoor, in virtual environments, in controlled sound environments. Yeah. And the intention, it goes onto this sound and reified nature too. So,
when you say refined nature, for you?
Reified? I mean, no, it's a French word, I'm sorry. Yeah, to become an object.
Okay, so I see what you mean. The way I perceive it, I understand that, as I said, the elements I picked from the ecology was the positive impact the natural environments do have on the human perception and well-being. So from that perspective, and also what is noise, it's something a personal perception as well. So in a specific, the controlled environment comes in the necessity of this specific individual. So under this circumstance, so we have, we have to provide a controlled environment. First of all, in order to be controlled, then we know what we're doing, and also because it's a very fine line between understimulation and overstimulation. So in a way, we have to kind of control that the exposure, if you want.
But why not bringing them, I mean, to some kind of sound walk or
absolutely,
or at least, because if you are doing things in the lab and stuff, we are creating knowledge about how to deal with these deficiencies or hard things indoor. Yeah. And I think it's a movement toward the hospital and things. Absolutely. So there is a need, I think, to develop knowledge about how it can go, how it goes if we are outside, if we are not in this institution, which are.
I see what you mean. I see what you mean. The first thing that comes to my mind is, first of all, we don't have always the possibility to do that, to take the kids outside and study, especially here in the northern countries. But apart from that, we start like the decision making for the people who takes decision in creating environments for studying, for education or therapeutic, like hospitals, environments that they can take these kind of studies into consideration, instead of having silence or even non-acoustical speaking spaces that can be very, very annoying for this specific group of people. And as you know, for example, autistic people are very sensitive, very hypersensitivity. So you have to consider what, now it's aural diversity, which is a very big thing and now comes in the foreground. But we have to consider what the specific group requires in their everyday life. If it's possible, of course, it's ideal to have them outdoors again by themselves, because they interaction with other people can be have a severe negative impact. Yeah. But also, for example, from the stories, I'll give you an example. The instruction when the kids were building the soundscapes was to create a comfortable environment, something to feel comfortable. And most of the kids, because we were a small discussion afterwards, they refer to a memory or something familiar to them, such as, oh yes, I went camping by the river with my father, the bonfire, that's it. Or, oh yes, that reminds me of my room when the rain kept tapping on the window. But at the same time, especially from the focus group, there were participants who said, oh, they said, I want loud and fast sound. That is comfortable for me. And then I realized, okay, so that's definitely out of the norm. So I think we have to consider this approach as well. We have to give space for this kind of selection. I don't know if I answered the question, but definitely it's definitely a lot of material for thinking and stuff. Very good. Yeah.
So, yes, only
do you want to do this for us? Hold the microphone. Sorry.
Yes, only a question, because I'm not a specialist in this group, but I think it's important to know how is the self-conscious of this group from the self-conscious of the children about this deficit. And perhaps it could be interesting for that to develop activities outdoor, as you are talking, for example, some work in which this group have as self-conscious and also the conscious in relation with the environment, with the others, with themselves.
Absolutely. I agree with you. A couple of things I have to say from my very narrow experience on the field, but from Trinity Academy was it's a Catholic school in a working town, in a kind of mainly working town with no high expectations by the parents. So I came across the difficulty talking with the clinical psychology of the school, suggesting let's inform the parents. And she said, well, we'll tell them things they will oppose because they don't have the knowledge and they don't want to know. And that's something when it comes to how much the system can offer to this specific individual. So that's what I have in mind, that even you have to take consideration also, not the ideal. The ideal definitely is a more democratic and more open space for growing both emotionally and mentally. But this is not always the case. And also, what I found is, and I found that later, is that the way that what is the word for that? Is in order to start the process to get the diagnosis in Greece, it is much easier and straightforward compared to UK, because the NHS is completely full of appointments. The only cases that they actually get diagnosed if they have a severe simple. So, and I said, okay, so is this a matter of bias in here? Anyway, so I found out much later after the but also, and also what comes on top of that is, in Greece, we do not provide medication for ADHD, where 90% of the cases in UK provide medication. And that is a problem I faced in the Halifax school, which was a 1,300 children school, and I couldn't find more than 8 ADHD kids without prescription. Where in Greece it was much easier, because here we invest in the psychological and behavioral therapy for the children to recognize what is happening, how they respond, and develop and protect themselves from this kind of situation. So this is a different approach and it's coming from.
Hi, thanks very much for the presentation. I just wondered, one of the findings, you made a distinction between responses to dual mono and binaural sound. Can you say a bit more about that?
Yeah. Is there something specific you want to know?
I just didn't.
I
didn't understand the thing.
Okay, great. Okay, so the idea of immersiveness, immersive soundscapes follow techniques for both for recording and representing sound, which include the amount of detail, of spatial detail and direction and positioning of sound in general. So we can say that the higher the order of ambisonics, which is the way you recorded the information, the more detailed the sound is. So that's why all the recordings were first and third, because I couldn't find many fire in third order and only first order. So I have to decode it, to encode it to third order. But so that's the part of encoding. So I created this drum virtually. So now we go to the binaural side, which is a decoding side of this sphere of sound, where I use the generalized HRTFs, which take into consideration the way we perceive the sound, even though they're generalized, as you probably know, our ears are like our fingertips, they are very personalized, very unique, and that's why we perceive different in the localization of the sound. I give generalized, but there is one study where they did, they measured the HRTFs of children. So I use this HRTF. So that is how I presented the sound. So that is one slide. How develop the stimulus. Now the dual mono. It was as you probably know, in the ambisonic, when you record, the first track is the W, which is the omni. It's an omnidirectional. It's an omnidirectional. It records the sound from all directions. So I use the first channel, which is the mono channel, and I say dual mono because it was in phase both left and right ear. Okay, so exactly the same. So that is the dual mono. Compared to the specialized sound. And again, just to mention that the point here was, if I enclose these individuals in a virtual sonic environment, is this distracting? Is it, because there is like the sea is over there, the fire can be over here, and say, is this distracting? That was in order to kind of point the way to use ambisonics, because it does improve the immersiveness of the experience. A small detail on that is this is a way I calibrated. I want the research. The research is very explicit in what is the intensity of the sound we produce. Even though there are great variations, I went for the ADHD. So, but I had to make sure that the participants, what reaches the participants' ear is exactly ADHD, both at mono and in the binaural production. So in the read we have a blog. I reproduce the sound, several sounds in the read. I measure with the microphone, ADBA, and then I also measure the microphone gain, gain at that time at the artificial head, and then I reproduce through headphones the same stimulus, and try to mark down the difference in gain in order to achieve the same input level. So that's how I calibrate my system in order to get the accuracy I wanted in the participant.
Thank you. Can we move on? Is it okay?
One last question,
because we're already out of time, and the last workshop is cancelled, so we'll have time afterwards. Yeah, the last workshop at 1 o'clock was cancelled, so we'll have time then to maybe. We're already out of time. I'm sorry, it's already 10:42. Should we move on? I mean, I'm really sorry, but thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much for the feedback.
So also, as Ms. Georgaki said, Julian Ferrando will not be with us today. So we'll move on to Eduardo Loria, right? And Meiyan Chen with a presentation Healing Soundscapes and Generative Composition, an insight into DJster. DJster. Great. Thank you.
Hello, everyone. My name is Meiyan Chen, and I'm here with Eduardo Loria. And we're a PhD student from Hamburg University of Music and Theater. And we are thrilled here to present our work on healing soundscapes and generative composition and insight into DJster. This project brings us together, like acoustic ecology and generative composition, focusing on how soundscape can contribute to well-being, especially in hospital settings. And this project it's divided into 4 main sections. First, introduction to the Healing Soundscape project. And second, an overview of DJster, which we're using for our generative music composition. And third is the application of DJster for our project. And last is the example of our composition using DJster. Let's start with the introduction to the Healing Soundscape project. The Healing Soundscape project is a collaborative effort between Hamburg University of Music and Theater, the University Medical Center Hamburg Eppendorf, UKI, that's which I will use for an abbreviation later, and the Ligeti Center. This partnership allowed us to combine the expertise in music, technology, and healthcare to create a soundscape that can promote well-being and in medical environments. And this project began in 2014 and saw significant development in from 2017 to 2019, supported by the Clausen Seymour Foundation, and it's presented. It's the installation, and as our soundscape, it's presented installed actually in the waiting room of University Heart Center and in the emergency department at UKI. And then with the renewed funding at 2022, we resumed our project in April 2023 and to refine and expand our healing soundscapes. Our project has 5 main goals that guide us to work on and in developing our healing soundscapes. The first, we focus on development of interactive electronic sound composition to the needs of individual for the sound environments. And the second goal is the healing environment. The aim is to enhance the acoustic atmosphere in hospital spaces. And the third is the search on the effects of soundscapes. Here we examine how diverse groups respond to different sound environments. And the fourth is the research based learning. It integrates both project work and critical reflection on soundscapes. And fifth, finally, and cross-disciplinary networking and exchange. It's a long-term aim of this project. Here is our the waiting room in the emergency department in UKE, which where our installation of our soundscape was set up. Okay, now is to the technical core of this project, the digester, the compositional tool, the generative compositional tool for our project. And many of you may already be familiar with generative music. It's a form of music that created by defining a set of musical rules or elements rather than composing every note manually. And here we use digester to realize that. And generative, this digester is based on composer's Clarence Barlow autobus algorithm and developed, named as digester by Georgaki, and is adapted into Max MSP and Ableton Live. So we can use in both software or programming language as the object. Yeah, here we got the illustration of digester's interface, and as what I said, it can be used as a plugin in Ableton Live, and then as an object in the Max MSP, it's a package in the Max Score. And if you are if you are interested in more in the digester's capacities in more detail, then please check the reference provided on the slide. And here, that's what digester's power lies in, this 12 adjustable parameters, and which controls aspects like pulse length, eventfulness, dynamic, and pitch range. By adjusting this, we can fine-tune each composition's emotional impact, creating unique and responsive soundscapes. And for example, take the harmonic clarity value as example. when we choose a scale to set out the space, sound, or the scale can be anything, any kind of scale as we need it can be programmed into this into DJster. And once a scale is set, we can the harmony clarity controls how closely music adheres to that scale, and when the value is set to higher value, then the music or sound will give you the feeling that it's more harmonically consistent and sequential, staying closely within the scale. Or in contrast, if a lower harmony clarity value introduce the chords like deviating further from the main key and resulting in a more varied and complex harmony structure. Yeah, that's my part, and Eduardo will take the next two.
Now we'll show how we apply this tool for the specific needs of the project. So here it was important for us to create what we called neutral music. Since we wanted to create an installation in the waiting room of a hospital, we had to take into consideration the needs of this environment, of this specific environment. And that was challenging for us as composers because usually we are trained to really like show off and call for attention. And actually this is the contrary of what we want to achieve in this project. Actually we want to achieve is to somehow with these compositions enhance the well-being of the people who are actually not a good situation when they are in these rooms. And for this we had to, like I said, create this neutral music or neutral soundscapes, which actually are very, very much in the background, kind of becoming the background of the room instead of being in the foreground, calling for your attention. So for that, we worked closely with music therapists, and we also, as composers, went to this room and we experienced the room. We talked with the people who are sitting there, sick or waiting for the appointment, and also, well, first to see how they are feeling when they are there, and also to us to understand the feeling of the room and to also hear the sounds from the environment of the room. And then having this feedback from the music therapists and having the experience in the room, we came with some guidelines for the material, how we could find the right ranges for DJster. DJster is very powerful, so we wanted to see where, in which the ranges of the parameters that would work better for our purpose. We work with samples in this, for this project, and the samples that we use, we built some sound banks that were also developed at the Ligeti Center. So we did recordings of many instruments. Some are acoustic instruments, some are digital instruments. We developed the sound bank there. And we came with some interesting outcomes from these iterations of the compositions and the feedback with therapists and patients. And for instance, we found that samples with a gradual envelope and with harmonic spectral content were better received by the patients compared with inharmonic spectral contents or with kind of hard envelopes, like with hard attack, for instance. Which was interesting, for instance, because some types of bells that are usually related with these therapeutical settings usually don't have harmonic spectral content. And at the beginning, we were trying a little bit with this type of instruments, and we were getting the contrary outcome of what we wanted to achieve. That was an interesting outcome. That's also related with these constant intervals, and they were also better received by patients compared with intervals that are not so consonant. And in this case, the pentatonic scales that we used also work very well compared with other types of scales. The frequency range, the mid-range, was also working better. The patients were also feeling or receiving it better compared with the low ranges or high ranges. They were relating these low ranges and high ranges with horror movies, for instance, or with very anxious feelings. On the contrary, the mid-range was better, and the mid-range was not fighting also with the rooms that were already coexisting in the room. That was also important for us. We also realized this after doing some tryouts. We also found out that having silence is important. Being DJster, a generative tool, it can just continue creating sound indefinitely. And the silence, we realized it was important to have moments of silence so that also the environment could rest and then come again. And we also found out that having rhythmic unpredictability and irregularity was working better compared with having a very regular rhythms or predictable rhythms. This created a more complex texture, which was easier to be in the background compared with something that's very rhythmical and regular. And also very slow tempo worked better for the project. We used valence, this is arousal approach for the compositions. Here we have this table where it's more or less illustrated how these some emotions can be related to these combinations of different amounts of valence and arousal. The y-axis being the arousal and the x-axis being the valence. We have 4 quadrants. We can see the right top quadrant is where the pleasant emotions are. The other 3 quadrants, we didn't use them because they were contrary to the objectives of our project. So we focused on exploring the different areas inside the right top quadrant where we have positive arousal and positive valence. Why did we do this? Because since this is an installation that is running the whole time in the emergency waiting room of the hospital, we also wanted to take into consideration that the environment of the hospital is also changing during the day. And we wanted to also adapt the compositions to how the environment is changing. So for instance, probably at 12 midday, there is more people around, there is more sunlight, there is more ambulances, more cars going around, there are more sounds. So we wanted to, for instance, there max valence, max arousal situation would probably fit better with this environment. On the contrary, probably very late at night, 2 a.m., 3 a.m., there are less cars around, there is less people, so the environment is probably more, there's more silence. So their neutral valence, neutral arousal approach to the composition would work better. So what we did is that each composition that the composers do for the project comprehends 5 different presets, so 5 versions of the same piece, let's say. And each version tries to approach these different 5 areas. And the idea is that during the day, the presets change depending on the time of the day, trying to adapt to the environment of the room. Here we have an example of the max patch that we're using. It's composed of 3 different parts. This part here, we call it the server. Here is where we load the compositions. The compositions are JSON files, and each composition has 5 presets inside, and this controls all the different parameters of DJster. Here we have 4 instances of DJster, which allow us to create very complex textures if we want to. It's not necessary to use all the instances, but it's possible. So this is the main, the part which generates the data for the patch. And then we have these other 2 parts. The right part is the server, the client, sorry. And the client receives the information from DJster, and there we have a sampler. This sampler receives these parameters from DJster, and it starts outputting the sounds depending on each composition. Here it's where the sound bank is also selected, which instrument we are using, etc., and also the spatialization. Right now in the hospital area where we have the first version of the installation, it's for 6 channels, but it can be adapted to different channels, to different configurations. And then we have the left part, and that's an interface that we made that is working through a local Wi-Fi network. And the idea for this is to make very easy for people who are not familiar with Macs to control the installation. So that's for the nurses, for instance. If they want to turn it off or turn it on or change the composition, it can be easily done through a smartphone or an iPad, a tablet. So that's the idea behind the interface. Yeah, also some parameters of the compositions can also be changed there. That's more like this expert mode part of the interface. But if not, it can just be used to turn it on or off or to change the composition to a different one. There are some future plans for the project. One is to expand the project to other rooms in the hospital right now. As we said, we are already doing some tryouts in the emergency room, emergency waiting room at the UKE. And there are already plans to start running it in January. If the next meetings we have in December, everything is fine, then it will already start working full-time in January. And there are plans to expand it to the radiotherapy room in the same hospital and hopefully also to other hospitals in the future in Germany. There are future plans to implement some AI into the patch. The idea is that the AI can explore the areas in between the different presets. That's a parallel project. There's already a team from the project working on that. And also to implement sensors, for instance, a loudness sensor. With this, we can also adapt the volume of the installation automatically depending on what is happening in the room. If there is suddenly too much people, then we have to, it can change the volume immediately with the sensor. For us, it's very important, this balance of the sound. The sound, we found that if it's too loud, people react negatively to it because it's too much in the foreground. If you don't listen to it, then it doesn't make any sense. So there is a very a sweet spot for the volume, which is very low, but still hearable, but very much in the foreground. It becomes kind of the background noise of the room. Yeah, now to finish, we will show 2 excerpts of our own compositions. So this is the composition of my colleague.
Actually, it should be very soft volume. It's nothing to focusing on this.
Yeah, right now this would be too loud for the room.
We do this like playing the music and we talking, have a meeting at the same time, and then if you are comfortable with it, it's not annoying to talk with it, then it means
It's working.
Yeah, it works.
If you forget that the music is there, it's working. If you are focusing too much on it, it's not working for the project. And then a small excerpt of mine. Yeah, thank you. We have here 2 links. The one is from the Legacy Center where we are developing the project with our team. Then you can check other projects, the events we have there. And also MaxScore. MaxScore is the package where DJster is contained and also the sampler that we are using for the project. So it's freeware. You can download it without paying anything. And well, you need the license for Max, but the package is free. And it's ready to use. There is already a sound bank included with the package, so you could already start doing some stuff with it. So, yeah. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you. Any questions, please? Yeah, we're just recording it. Yeah, that's why we're using mic. Thank you.
Thank you very much. It's a very interesting presentation. I have two questions, if that's okay. The first question is about you referring to the people that you tested it with. I'd like to know how many people you tested it with, how you reported their responses. You can show the graph, but I'd be quite interested to know the duration of time that elapsed before asking them how they felt after 5 minutes, how they would feel if they were coming back at different occasions. And I'd be interested to know as well if you presumably you have some awareness of other installation type work that's been done like this, who your reference points are, and presumably you're aware of very prominent people like Brian, who have created works for specific spaces. And I suppose I have a third question really, what would be more efficacious about this in using music that actually fits the criteria that you already listed, and maybe adding on some of the technology in relation to various ambient variables?
I will do the first question. Like, since this research or project is start like 10 years ago, so there were already a lot of master students, PhD students, and researchers working on testing how the patients react on different kinds of sounds. And now we are basing on that result to create our composition. But of course, we're trying to make more adjust things. But like, think about that when you are a patient, and I don't mean that you're going to sick or something, but when you are in the hospital and then you go to an emergency waiting room, and you don't go every day, you just go there once, like, yeah, just once, maybe for 1 year, like one day for 1 year, of 1 year or 4 years. So it's totally like a one-time thing for people who go there. Or people have regular disease, they go more regularly. And then, yeah, of course, they also have different kinds of feedback. But it really depends on how the patient feel about themselves. Like, if they're really severe pain or problems, then they really annoyed by all kinds of sounds, basically. But if they're like have a good mood, somehow they are comfortable with most of the sound, or the sound that, yeah, they have a preference, of course, yeah, something like that.
Sorry, how do you gauge their feedback? Are you speaking to them there? Is it after?
We run the installations in the compositions that we have. We run them in the waiting room. Then we are first observing how people are reacting. If they are noting that there is something in the room, sometimes the people there, if something is not going very well, they start making comments about it. We also approach them and ask them, what do you think about what you're hearing, or do you hear something? And then we, after every time when we do a test in the waiting room, after that we have a meeting with all the team. And we try also all the team to be there at the same time, sitting also there.
And also we have quantitative analysis with other researchers. They use questionnaires or interviews, different methods to collect the data for this assumption or summary to how they feel, how the patients feel about this sound.
Continue your question.
did you have a qualitative research with the responses of the patients?
Yes, we have the paper, but it's not here,
Okay.
but we can share.
And so all of the patients feel better, all of them, or some of them they say, I don't like.
I have to say, in the very beginning, a lot of patients feel annoyed because in the very beginning stage, like as composer, we have the like a composer's ego to like have our own aesthetic to compose. Yeah. So we have our values and different things to put in the compositions, and those composers are like a master students and things like that. So it didn't work so well because now when we do multimedia composition, we are doing a lot of experimental stuff. So we are used to, as a composer, we're used to a lot of sounds that can be, yeah, can be horrible for other people, for the people that don't have musical background. Yeah. So yeah, in the beginning it's really difficult to make adjustments for this. Yeah,
but very subjective. Yeah. But you have never measured the blood pressure or other things that are measured just to see if they like, they don't like, because after you must go to other measurements like electroengineering.
Yes, that's a very good idea that I will bring up in our meeting.
Yeah. For the
you must test which are the results.
Yes.
Yeah,
like
I think there are plans for since we want to apply that in another room, in the radiotherapy room. For that project, they want to also create a focus group with patients so that more regularly we can meet with the patients and ask them and get feedback more in this focus group setting rather than just sitting in the waiting room and asking them how they are feeling and how they are perceiving what they are hearing.
But the biological test is very important too, I think.
That would be also a good idea.
Thank you. I have one remark and one question.
Yeah.
The remark is about the sound level, because I have the same. You told us about loudness.
Yes.
I have kind of the same experience. I run some listening sessions with kind of noisy sounds with people, and I really realized that some very, very teeny variation in the loudness may turn from a very calm moment to a super like tension something. So this is definitely a very important parameter, I think, for that.
Definitely.
And the question now is about maybe did you think about adding or maybe switching to some extent to some instruments, to some objects in the room? Because I was thinking about, I have a friend who works in hospitals for calming people in rooms, kind of similar, but she's a designer and she works with objects for manipulating with hands. And she has done many things with just like putting just soft materials or having very interactive objects. And there's something about, to be calm, there's something I think about being involved into the object and being active. And I think maybe something about being only a receptor, something, you receive something that suggests to you. Maybe there's something to deal with making people part because they arrive with their energy and they have to release their energy, so they need to express it. So maybe having some, I don't know, some instruments or they can play with teeny sounds. Is it something you talk about?
Please remind yourself that it's patients. They might like problems with their body and but of course maybe there are other people to want to use this instrument. But I think in Germany people normally trying to, as a Chinese, I observe from different culture, like from like a distance, and like people trying to not interrupt other people. So they even have the problem to use the interface we designed for them to on the phone. They might worry that it's gonna interfere or something, and then they don't want to change anything for as a group. So yeah, and then actually in our project we have two groups. The first one is like an electronic sound composition, and another one is healing soundscape live. So it's a music therapist. Yeah, the thing you are talking about, the interactive, is more like music therapy. So people interact with each other, but this here and we are actually trying to do this like whole day running thing. So it's hard to like we go there for 1 hour. Maybe we can do some experiments like that, but you cannot always be there to. Oh, another thing, it might have seat, you know. In the beginning, we are thinking about changing our speaker system, and I say, okay, maybe we can use Bluetooth or something. Yeah, so some Bluetooth is easier to carry, easy to change positions, and we can try out sounds. But actually, the thing they worry the most is not how the sound is, but worry that people will steal things from that, because there's something happened like that before. So there are a lot of practical things, actually not like what we imagine in our just writing and planning on the paper. So yeah, and the Healing Soundscape Live is recording in acoustic instruments, and they compose like improvisation. Yeah, so and then we use some of their samples, their recorded samples, to put in our sample bank to use them to create our electronic compositions. Yeah, hope this answer your question.
Thank you. Please, thank you for a wonderful presentation. Please, could we move on, because we're not going to have a coffee break if we move like that. It's already 11:15. Thank you very much. Thank you. So, next one is Mr. Iannis Zannos and Martin Carlé with the workshop Soundscapes as Mythologies of Performative Environments.
Before we switch on, Martin is going to present us his early work in 2021, 2004, yes, 2004, yes, in the sound archaeology related to Homer, to the Odyssey, and I'll let him introduce that. We visited, the object of our residency was the northwesternmost island of Greece, which is a couple of miles northwest of Corfu itself, where my university is, and it's called Othoni, and it's supposed to be, in modern popular mythology, it's supposed to be the island of Calypso, because it's very beautiful and it's got many caves by the sea. And when you're there, personally, I finish with that, you really feel like ancient Greek gods are in the air. So, of course, this is a modern myth that's used like in many other countries, and especially in Greece. But it was a source of scientific and artistic inquiry for us. And you get the other point of view from Martin as a media archaeologist, media theorist, and sound enthusiast, and from Justine Gousseau as a dancer and musician, from an artistic and scientific point of view. I should mention the full team. We went there with Martin, Justine, Andrea Cohen, who is a sound artist in Paris, and we had a PhD student who's doing sound using PD and nowadays Chuck. And we also had a pre-residency with a group of belonging to the Feedback Musicianship Network, a very interesting group in Europe, international Northern Europe oriented. And finally, one of the members, Alice Eldridge, who's a professor at Sussex University, also did the residency and contributed some videos and some discourse. And since our time is limited, we will be just presenting. I will just let Martin to present, and then I will co-present with Justine. Okay, so Martin, it's your turn now.
Okay, thank you very much for the introduction. Hello, everybody, and thank you for having me. So, breaking in here from southern Germany, from a very different, probably acoustic ecology, as you see in the background, a medium of the voice far different from today and from the ancient world, with a different time, different clocks here. So, I'd like to speak about the acoustic ecological perspective on the mythological, of mythos itself, so which stands next to epos or epos, and it means literally just very simple word, speech. But in a quite different sense, as we perceive it today, it means the true word, the essential word, quite far away from poetry or even fiction, that comes from that as a piece of art comes from a mind of a genius, which is quite different from what we have in Homer. And Homer himself is a mythos. How did the two oldest and major pieces, vast pieces of literature, come about? Why do they exist at all in the absence of writing? These are the quite well known and so-called Homeric questions. And well, we are asked to think quite differently to grasp this distance and what it would have meant probably to live in an oral society and an oral culture. And further, then, what is the essential difference between the Iliad, the oldest, and the Odyssey, a bit younger, of course? Well, the Iliad is a report on a defining war. It formulates an ethological catalog, how to behave, how to well behave, men among men, but also men in the face of the immortal, or the personalized immortal, the immortals that are the gods. Yet the Odyssey itself is already a self-reflection on the song itself, of what it means to perform mythos, on the bard, on his profession, what it means to receive and be able to preserve a knowledge as a professional in an oral culture. So what we are supposed to find as the true, real core of the Song of the Sirens, or probably not the real site of Troy, as Hermann Schliemann did, who read the Iliad and found the place, but the reality of an acoustic ecology, I would say, an ecology of wisdom. So we'll very quickly rush through and report on this acoustic archaeological expedition that we did in 2004, 20 years back now. It was a non-paid expedition inspired by Friedrich Kittler, and it was organized by Wolfgang Ernst, but it was carried out by a biologist, Karl-Heinz Frommholt, who was the custor of the Animal Voice Archive of the Humboldt University in Berlin, and a fresh-baked assistant professor of media theories, which was myself. So before we now start, or I will now give the stage to a little visually led and visually loaded presentation that should be here, share. Well, I hope you will see now two sirens and the Odysseus bound to his mast. Is it true? Yes, okay, good. So unless we set out, it might be worthwhile to, cite some other reflection on the reflection of the sirens, that means on the mythological core itself, that is an acousmata, a Pythagorean acousmata in the classical archaic form of wisdom or knowledge, question and answer, play. So the question, what is the oracle of Delphi? And the answer, the tetractus, which is already a mathematical conception of the world, the harmony in which the sirens are. So, here is a reconstruction of the possible path that Odysseus took as he left from Troy and went 10 years on his Troy ride. And we see Italy, he should have come from Kirkes Island towards the Cyrenusai, the islands of the Sirens. And these are today Ligali. That's the modern name that in the archaic sources we know as the Cyrenusai, so the islands of the Sirens. And they have this particular shape. So one big one, little half moon-like, and two rocks in the front. And the opening of the two, so if you look to the towards these two rocks from this big island that you see here, it opens like a mouth. It goes exactly in the direction where Odysseus should have approached this island. And here we see equipment that we put on our expedition. These are high-performance loudspeakers that we were measuring, so to know what their characteristics are by a particular microphone suited for this care. Then we put them on our trip and made it on a boat. Finally, here is the further recording equipment that we usually bring, but we were also hearing the myth cited from Friedrich Kittler in this case. And finally, we arrived at the island having this extraordinary view, halfway's non-reality already. And the question is, so what the myth would wanted us to tell here? And I'd like to read you this original tone, O-tone, as they say in Germany, of the sirens themselves. They are quoted by Omiros in this passage, and they raised their clear-voiced song. Come hither, as to farthest renowned Odysseus, great glory of the Achaeans. Stay thy ship, that thou mayst listen to the voice of us two. For never yet has any man renowned passed this isle in his black ship until he has heard the sweet voice from our lips. Nay, he has joy of it, and goes his way a wiser man. For we know all the toils that in white Troy the Argives and Trojans endured through the will of the gods. And we know all things that come to pass upon the fruitful earth. So they spoke, sending forth their beautiful voice, and my heart was faint to listen. So in the description that Kirke gave the goddess Odysseus beforehand, she was mentioning this meadow, often rocky thing in the sea, very helpful if you need fuel, if you need water, if you need to go on a big journey, and it's probably a site that you would like to go to. Now, acoustically, why we brought speakers very quickly is because of this biological knowledge of a sound source that we have the left side, which can travel extraordinarily far path if the weather conditions are correct. So we have a warm layer of air on top and a cool layer that is cooled by the sea in summertime. And what happens is it creates a channel that allows the sound to travel far, far further. And it's the only explanation why animals in the desert can communicate at all on extraordinary far distances that the biologists knew about. And so we decided to make up our acoustic signals for measuring the surrounding, the place. And we see in the left corner up, this our technical signals quite clearly. The spectrum of them we see here, so we have a reference of what frequencies we can actually measure in what amplitude and what that means as a correction to the other measurements. Then on top we have monk seals that are still living in the Aegean, but less frequent than they were supposed to be then, and their voices resemble human voices. And then one layer below, we have voices that we recorded from two opera singers we brought on the place to have different intervals, vowel intervals in a very clear manner. And these are the signals we will we would like to play to the rocks and record them and see if we can gather anything from it. Here, our equipment. Then it was getting a bit tougher on the island, unloading the equipment, bringing it down to this very spot here close to the sea. So not on the rocks like Lorelei and our dreamy poetic view of the silence maybe that we have back in Germany here on the Rhine, on this river. And other people that were with us in our journey, they also thought they must have been on the rock. No, we thought they needed to be down there, and we had to compensate for the rough weather that we can see at the back a little bit already. Here's our measurement equipment, the Brûlumpier, and then a self-made construction with this white receptor that we were also knowing quite well how it would behave. Finally, we are going on this path. That is the next thing that I will play to you as a video and sound recording at these 5 places that the measurement were taking place. So the loudspeaker is on the right side, as you see blue, and then 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. We made it slowly in the basin and then towards these 2 rocks that we suppose to have an probably effect on the sound. So 3, 4, 5 are the crucial measurement points and what to see from that. And now I play to you 5 minutes of original, or cut it, but still original footage, and get very quickly back then to tell you what the results were. So now here we go. Yeah, and what will happen? Okay. We are starting out very, very early because we needed to, since the weather was changing. It got rough, far different from the nice light we saw before and the calm sea. And the precondition is a calm sea that we only have in, or that we usually have in summertime, but not at April that we came and needed to come, unfortunately. So it's getting rougher and rougher, and at the end we don't have any video anymore because the waves got too high and we needed to switch it off. So we will have black only sound. Oh, so can you see that? Okay, good. So we go.
Ich lasse jetzt ganz einfach mal kurz weiterlaufen und zwar waren wir Winkel von 90 Grad. Zu dem Lautsprecher sind aber abgetrieben. Entfernung sagen wir ca. 150 Meter. Auf der linken Spur ist der Trichter und auf der rechten Spur habe ich den Pull und Gear. Einfach noch eine Serie durchziehen. Mal ein bisschen rein. Hier mal rein. Egal. Versuchen wir es. Ja. Also wir versuchen nochmal zwischen die Inseln zu fahren. Okay. Bei der letzten Serie waren die Mikrofone Richtung Felsen gerichtet, also genau eine Serie. Es war Felsen der kleinen Insel, der kleinen linken Insel, die eine recht senkrechte Wand hat. Okay. Bingo. Doch, deutlich gehört, ja? Deutlich. Deutlich. Ganz deutlich. Trotzdem ist die raus. Hm? Ja, aber dann wollen wir nicht noch ein Stück raus und dann gucken. Nee, das wird ja unruhig. Das bringt nichts. Das Risiko ist mir zu groß. Aber was soll da passieren? Soll das mal schaden? Kannst du noch mal fahren? Okay, stopp. Before the rock. Before, yes. Ja. Okay. Dangerous. Ja. Cool. Copy. No problem. Ein Problem für die Technik. Ja, aber noch nicht so viel. Noch nicht. Oh, okay. Oder war hier, ja, etwas hinter der Linie geht. Genau auf der Linie, okay, gut. So. Very nice. Was sehr gut durchkommt, sind die Sirenen. Ja. Bei den letzten beiden Aufnahmen waren wir sogar schon hinter so einem Felsenvorsprung. Der Lautsprecher war schon verdeckt gewesen.
Okay.
Wir sind aber noch hinter den...
So, kann man Can you see this image again, Iannis? No, okay. Maybe I unshared, so I will do this again. Okay, probably. Okay, are we back? Okay, great. So these were the measurement points. You heard it got, someone got dangerous and we needed to finally return. So what's important now, well, we have, if you listen to this audio recordings, you can clearly hear what we now see visually, maybe probably better than in our conditions of listening to it. But position one, of course, was clear, lots of overtones, strong, and we now look at the second tooth of these recordings, and it constantly grows. And in the fourth and fifth position, it's actually higher than at the beginning, and we reflect that here at this most dark curve. This is position 4. Position 5 is similar, and we see an amplification, a clear amplification in loudness in these frequencies where the voice is most prominent. And so we have definitely an amplification effect and the blurring out of other less human and voice-centered frequencies. But we found also in relation to these different kinds of signals that we hope you could understand and track, the very technical ones, and then the monk seals that sounded quite strange probably, but still maybe kind of human-like here and there, and then this different types of intervals and sweeps of the sirens recording, the human voices recording. So here we have the siren with 2 pipes and double aulos, that relates to how the intervals are in relation to each other. If you look at the ancient Greek scale, here is a diagram how from the enharmonic that should have been the only one that they studied and that was most prominently used in the on the theater and on the drama on the stage, how the other the diatonic and the chromatic derive from the enharmonic, and that the enharmonic has as a characteristic interval not just the small ones but actually the third. Not just the quint, quart, and the octave, but actually the third. And if you look at this very interesting diagram, you can see that the octave, the fifth, and the fourth are perfectly merging into each other, and you cannot differentiate 2 different voices. It's impossible. The text of Homer points out that Homerus 3 times, and even Sophocles has it still, that the signs were 2, and exactly 2, and not 3 and 5 and whatever you have later in depictions on vases and so on, but actually 2, it's a grammatical form and very clear. And it's said they sing from one voice. But to differentiate 2, you need to have the fifth and you have these different intervals. You could only learn this from another siren that I might have played you if there's more time, from Helmholtz, that has studied us all these possibilities of differentiating and comparing intervals with the respective math necessary. So, thank you. That's from my side, and I hope the 15 minutes were.
Take the sound away. So, this was going to present us the concept of a research project that's ongoing after a collaboration that we had since 2023, when we organized a distributed live coding concert between Japan and Greece, between Tokyo and Elefsina at the Elefsina Cultural Capital Festival that ran in October 23. And Justin was a choreographer. And as a musician and media artist as well,
The subject of her research is bridging between different modalities of technological arts, including dancing with vendors, and research in the field in a sound ecology way, from the perspective, of course, of a very subjective, experiential, including all the logistics, including connecting with the culture, the living people in there on the island, and mythology itself, focusing on different time scales, the macro time scale of the atomic clock, and the thousands of years time scale of mythology, which can even expand much more than thousands, tens of thousands, 100,000 years, if we go back to Indian mythology. Okay, so you want to say a few words and then show us your video explaining this in practical manner. Yes.
So, my statement as an artist, because I'm here as a protagonist, so my concern through this collaboration is how we can raise relevant artistic objects from this collaboration to several kind of methods. My statement as well is that I don't put any kind of hierarchy in the method, so because I'm a dancer, that I'm purified by the dance for me. So I try to put everything at all levels. And during this residency that we've been over there, it's true that the matter of temporality went to be, for me, a very good entrance to try to investigate a field that is very dear to me, which is how we can accumulate different kind of realities, but at the same time orchestrate them in order to unify them, and how we can create a very innovative sensorial experience for the audience, so that the experiment is something that is separate but is unified at the same time. So what I came today with a video that is 15 minutes, so we don't have the time for it, where I've been gathering all the archives of this residency. So it was about a site-specific methodology of investigation. It was improvisation, sonic voice, body improvisation, more spontaneously inside this very strong environment of the island. It was conceptualizing the island itself as a cave, and not so much like there is a cave, so it might be the island itself. So, but the island for me came to be a cave because the nature is so dense, like really closed inside, have no view. So it's like creating this feeling of being trapped somehow. So, and making improvisation with sound captors and any kind of movement captors. And I try to propose this work. Random accumulation, let's say, that is producing something. But I suggest that we go straight for it because we don't have so much time. It's still on Premiere, as you can see, because I'm not a technology person, and I couldn't find it, the whole thing. So let's just go for it just for a few minutes. What you will see is an accumulation of many ideas of the decay, the myth of Calypso, the island over there, to try to create an immersive experience. So I will just put it for a few minutes, and what I will ask to you is just not try to focus on one picture, but to really have a peripheral gate, and to really try to have a video that you will see at one time, and I will ask you really to try to look at all of them. And I will next start in the video. You have some? Maybe we can put the function. Yeah, Violet, even one if you want, just for you to. Yeah, please.
Thank you very much. Any questions?
Yes.
Thank you. We might as well just have one, because we're already over time.
If you're interested, I would be very interested to put this video online, but if you have time to look at it entirely and to have your feedback
website,
about it on my website if you want, so that I'm very interested to see how this immersion can work and what is this service if you want to handle it for a few more minutes.
Thank you.
Thank you. It's fascinating. I wonder if you could say a little bit more about the videos and how they connected with what you said previously. Right? I just felt like I couldn't quite understand the link. But,
Okay. Both videos, briefly. The last one, before, why they were for, what one of them relates to.
Well, I would need much more time that I don't have, unfortunately, to explain to you the concept of each video and how it's relating to the link and macro temporalities and how I think processing that. And I'm missing this kind of stuff.
Thank you.
Great. Thank you very much. Thank you, Zannos. Oh, sorry. And now, Jose Luis Carles or Carles and Christina Palmese with the workshop Transforming by Listening.
In the meantime, I present ourselves. I'm Christina Palmese from the Universidad Europea de Madrid. José Luis Carles from Universidad Autónoma de Madrid. We work in the crossroad between urban planning, composition, sound art, to try found this connection between different disciplines in the city, working on the city. So the idea is how we can found this common space to work together, how we can found the common language, because the objectives apparently are different. But we want to start with the 3 questions, because we think this is very important in this moment to pose questions and found all together answer. Oh, okay. The fundamental question that we pose are we can learn to think about the place through the direct experience in the place. The other one is it's better to think about the change or to change way of thinking. And the last one is how to explore the body as a sensor capable of transforming and be transformed by listening. Other question, a fundamental question for us is the objective of our research is the city, and until now we are studying the city in different plans, or we are in the sensitive, subjective, truth measurement, we are painting, singing, but in this moment of crisis, climate crisis, in this difficult social, political moment, we need to find tools that put together many the perspective in the real ground. The other point is for us is very important. It was posed already from Lefebvre and Regulier. Proposed the point of observation of the reality as a central question, because many times we are out of the environment that we want to study. They ask themselves, are we immersed in the flow, in the movement that we want to characterize, or is it, on the contrary, our external point of view, dominating the phenomenon from above and in the distance? We continue to think that is the real, for us is a very fundamental question, how we are as a researcher.
We think that the sound is a crucial element to change this way, to make this immersive kind of research. We use the idea that Edgar can tell us in the last night in the concert with the idea of the sound work of Westerkamp, and they say this very important question is how we are transformed by sound, and how the sound can transform the space to the reality. So for us, this method, the sound work, is crucial for this interpretation of the reality, of the local identity, the local reality. And this is one of the important methods that we use for this objective that Christina said.
But in this moment, there are other other use of the sound work, this in more scientific aspect as a ISO rule. But it's, for this reason, we think we need to speak about these tools as a complex approach to the reality. To think about also for the other way to stay in the public space. And we think about sound work also as a revolutionary method to stay in the public space, to stay as an act to stay in the public space and in a different way, because not only to go across, but to stay and make some kind of performance and interact with the reality. This is a way to building something more deep with the space. We explain after. This is a way to stay in collective way and to appropriate our body, the collective body, and the environment, because it's yes. I can see after our sound work is not just a passive collection of data, but it's an active action aimed to interact with the place and their inhabitants, establish a dialogue open to an unexpected event in a place. For us, it's fundamental to pay attention to our body, because we live in a society where our body discrete activity. We don't use all our capacity of perceive the world. We need to exercise, to make exercise, to improve our capacity to feel the reality. The other element is very important to pay attention to collective body and pay attention to the environment. Coming from this idea. I can with my we have some rule for this our experimental sound work. It's very important to be aware of our experience in a space. For this reason, the first rule is to think that the sound work is a time for ourselves. And we can redesign this rule and meantime and organize a group in the specific city, in a specific moment, in a specific kind of people that we stay together. It's very important to connect with the sound in all directions, and after use the also digital tools, but not only to relegate to the technology, the capacity to record the environment, but the use to amplify our sensorial device, the physical body, our body capacity, use technology to amplify this capacity and see something very small or very big, to try to record some sound that we can hear easily with our ear. No, no, no. In our sound walk, the bodies became a sensor. In this sense, we want to pay attention how we can expand our sphere of influence in the environment. It's very complicated, but yes. Yes, I try. Yes, I can. Drive. I can share with Ram. Yeah. Okay. So, yes.
Really sorry for that. Let's continue.
So, our idea to talk about this about sound walk, our method our way to think about sound walk as an immersive, a transversal tool between urbanism and music. For us, it's very important to rethink the research challenges in this moment.
Also in this method that we apply in different cities, in different spaces, we have many materials, but one very important aspect is to understand that it's not a passive method. It's important to have an active disposition for try to interact with the space. This is important because this connects also with the idea of to change the space, to change in activist idea. So for that we try to create a connection with the space, but first of all, it's important the connection with ourselves. So we made some exercise in the start of this activity to connect with ourselves, to redesign our way of moving in the city, to explore the space, not in like usual everyday activities like a robot that we move from one place to another in a very mechanical way. So we try to break this predisposition and to create a renovation and use our body as a sensor to connect with first with ourselves, also with the other people we work with us, and also with the other people that is in the space, with the animals, with the plants, with all the universe. So it's important exercise that we made in the start of this method, try to connect with all these elements. And we have some rules. These are open rules. Also, we add the rules that the people think that are important. So it's a very collective experience.
And for this situation, within this conference, we invite you in the two activity, the two at the end of the rule. You can experience this 5 or 7 minutes with closed eyes and stay in a comfortable way and listen all around you and pay attention how your body change the predisposition to the whole environment. And the other exercise and to record your experience in your mother tongue, no? The topic of a language and how we communicate with and the other people is very important. You know, we use English as a common language, but all the experience we can share because we are very related with our mother tongue. And so many details is impossible to translate. And in many cases, it's difficult to speak very well. No? English, if we are in the other country and we don't use this language every day. So we invite, if you want to make this experience, you can send us by email your experience, and we are making a map in the whole workshop that we are making this year. And we have a map of the people that speak about their experience.
Another idea of this method is that the people must enjoy. It's experience for enjoy the moment. Yes. As Francesco Carreri said, when we lost the time, we gain the space. No? Yes. So yes. And also this idea of it's a moment for us. Don't think about the time. Don't think about the obligations or the things. And a moment for enjoy and collective to organize. Also the path, the work is organized collectively. In a collective way, so someone can say we can go to this side or another. So it's not very fixed method. It's very open.
Yes, against a little bit the result, like something that concluded, fixed. That is our world, Occidental world, no, oblige. We for straight the need to have some result concrete, even though it's very interesting for anybody. But our environment. Obliga, I don't know, to tend something that isn't really useful for nobody but it's the only thing that we need. In this case, we open this ambience, this idea of useful for us to think about our idea of comfort for us, not for economic point of view.
We use this method in different contexts, in different projects. We also in different spaces. We developed this idea, for example, in Istanbul, in the Menoni Square, in Lisbon, the last year also in Paris with Matis in the Saint-Denis. We have many materials, and it's also a very interesting method for students. We also in Madrid, for example, we go with the students to develop this method because it's something very important for the learning and for the situation of the student to work with the air.
Yes, the result can be an aesthetic work on the urban data, but this data isn't some only measurement because in this case we have some point. In this point we take a record and measurement, but in between we make some very different performance in this space. The idea is to...
Yeah, there is also connected with the history of the spaces, so we work also with the memory of the spaces. We try also to make different layers of information. There is also information of the noise map of the city, but also information of the historical aspect of this point. In a city like Madrid, there are of the history of the kingdom, of the spaces used in different way, and all these material are connected. It's important to connect the past with the present in order to design the future with all these elements, also with the memory of the inhabitants that we lost the future in this moment of change.
Other concept is the empathy, and how, as a research, we can facilitate in a way to unlearning. No? For us, unlearning in this moment is very important to find a right way to observe the reality. And in the same way, embracing a familiar viewpoint. Because in many occasions, we are only in a specific topic or a specific research. And it's very interesting for us to experiment with our other diversity of way to live in a space, to stay in a space. And the other point is is how in a collective way we make sense of place, to observe as individual, but also as a collective.
This is what we said, is open to different ideas, so we have here some of the proposal of other participants in this some works that develop some idea for explore this space with the different persons.
This is other invitation. You can make this exercise to note your flow of memories when you cross in this space in Athens. You can document your experience to a record or draw or something else, or with the body or choreography or something in order to amplify the experience of this place and document this amplification. The other proposal by the other participant in our team is to found a hidden city, So this space is unnoticed that we meet in the city. And
this is very interesting because we can see here the different generations. So the Carlé in his proposal is more than a person of 50 years old, and Alejandro is younger than if he is more interested in more avant-gardist and technological questions, as he says, to study the invisible sound, the sound of the electricity, and how to try to connect with the sound hidden in the city, and try to create new ways of listening the city in a more modern way. And finally, this is we return to Westerkamp ideas, how we can use this for transform the space, but also for transform us by the listening. About this project, we have some papers. We have publication in the Urban Planning magazine, also in musical magazine. So we diffuse on this project the results in also in musical magazines and in urban magazines, but also we have a channel of diffusion that we offer to all persons in this Congress, because it's a very strange thing that in this moment one national radio broadcast open for this kind of projects. So we have a week hour in the Radio Nacional de España, the national radio, with this program, La Casa del Sonido, the Hub of Sound, that we use for diffuse all these projects related with sound art, soundscapes, acoustic ecology. So we offer our channel for everybody in this Congress. Do you like to diffuse your results, your pieces, your projects? We offer our window in the Casa del Sonido for your outputs. So this is, you can listen the different podcast. This is a 22 years program in the radio, in Spanish radio. So there are many results of many projects, many pieces in the podcast. So you can send us your materials. Thank you.
I'm afraid we're running a little out of time, so if we could hold our questions. There's gonna be sound work also today with Ms. Tsagarakis, so I guess we'll have some time also before to continue all the same and to experience it by ourselves while you are proposing actually during our sound work. So if we could please move on to Iain Findlay with a presentation called CIVIS, Sacred Sound, Sacred Spaces, a Student's Creative Approach. Okay.
Hello. Yeah, so I'll start my presentation. Thanks for the presentations that have just happened as well. I found them really interesting, and I had a question, but I'm not going to ask it now, but I'll ask it later. But I suppose it was just about something that's come up in the last couple of presentations about time and about the experience of time that we can access through listening. And that's maybe something that will come through this presentation as well. In a sense, Jose Luis and Christina have done some of my work for me, which is very nice because sound walking plays a part in the project that I'm about to tell you about now. But also, I thought that the questions you raised at the start, I think you said, can we learn to think about place through direct experience of place? And also, in this difficult political moment, we need to find tools to propose a new view. I think is something you said at the start of your presentation. And these things, I think, relate in a big way to the project that I'm about to discuss, which I was involved in, which was led by this university and Anastasia, but I also worked with yourselves as well. And some other people in this room who I've not seen for a couple of years, so it's nice to meet you again. So this presentation is really about this project, which was a summer school, a master's level summer school project. And I'm going to try and summarize that project, and then I'm going to talk a little bit about a practical exercise that we did with students within the summer school program. One of the things that I've realized in coming back to this project is that, and in trying to summarize the summer school, is that a lot happened. A lot was achieved in this course in a really short amount of time. And I'll try and summarize what we did and then talk specifically about this kind of field recording and soundscape composition project that happened within the summer school. So what is CIVIS Sacred Sound, Sacred Spaces Summer School? This was a collaboration between several European universities led by this one with the following aim: to explore the interplay between music, sound and space in relation to the experience of sacredness in both historical and present day perspectives. So at the very outset, there was a kind of aim to explore resonances between ways of studying music, ways of engaging with sound, and ways of engaging with and understanding architecture and spaces more generally. The course was designed to be site-specific, so really in the first iteration it was about being in Athens or being in different parts of Greece and engaging specifically with ancient spaces here. It was an ambitious course design, so there was scholarly study involved, lectures and things like that, but also collaborative practice-based learning. So, field work and site visits and things like that, which I'll talk more about in a minute. The course was also multidisciplinary and collaborative, and brought together professors from a number of different universities that were working in notionally quite different fields. So there were musicologists, sound artists, acousticians, people, working in different areas, and again trying to bring this knowledge and these perspectives together to explore these connections between music, sound, and sacred space. The summer school kind of happened in two phases. The first phase was a series of weekly online lectures where people kind of learned on a Zoom, and then we had a 1 week kind of in-person summer school in the first year in Athens, so in Athens in 2022, and then in Madrid the following year in 2023 with a different group of students. So yeah, weekly online lectures, and then in the second phase, in-person lectures, site visits and collaborative fieldwork, acoustic room modelling, field recording, soundscape composition, and some music performance. So a lot of different things for the students to kind of get their heads round and try, not just try and do, but try and connect together. So that was kind of our task, was to make these things make sense in the round. Yeah, lecture topics included acoustic ecology and ecological aesthetics, analysis of ancient vocal performance in Gregorian chant, virtual sonic reconstruction of ancient theatres through acoustic room modelling. And through this learning, we wanted to encourage the students to ask themselves, how did acoustics of ancient architecture influence vocal composition and performance, and vice versa? And how do all these things kind of influence each other, and how can they be investigated in various ways? And so that's a bit about the summer school generally as a kind of context, and you can see some pictures of smiling people here. So it was fun. That's another thing to say about this collaboration. But yeah, kind of groups of students, groups of teachers in different sites doing different things. I'll now talk a little bit about some of the practical work that we did on the course, and just how that might kind of fit into some of the things that have been discussed already today and the wider themes of this conference. So during the week in Athens, the kind of structure for the week was more or less that the first couple of days was kind of like lecture presentations, context and learning, almost in a kind of conference type, classroom type situation. And then in the third, fourth and fifth day, which were the final days, it opened up into more practice-based work and more collaborative work. So we had 18 students from 7 European universities, and Glasgow, that doesn't count as Europe anymore, but I don't know, let's pretend it does. Met in person in Athens, undertaking collaborative practical projects. The students did lots of different practical things, but I'm going to focus on one aspect of that, which I was kind of involved in and led bits of. So that involved basically a series of sound walks, a kind of evolving collaborative practice of making field recordings, and then eventually making soundscape compositions, again collaboratively, as a way of bringing together everyone's ideas and experiences. So students were tasked with undertaking a collaborative creative process and producing a soundscape composition as a way of encouraging them to discover the sounds of the city and apply some of the theories and the ideas from their lectures. Initially, this involved sound walking in specific sites. We've heard a bit about sound walking a minute ago from Jose Luis and Christina, but a way of not just walking around and listening, but kind of self-consciously spending time in these spaces, attending to our body, attending to the various sounding processes around, with no fixed kind of agenda or outcome in mind. So sound walking in these ancient sites, and then moving to a kind of documentary process that kind of flowed from the sound walking, making field recordings using different devices in sites including the Acropolis, Theatre Dionysus, a particular church that we visited, and people performed vocal music in, and Plato's Academy as well as a kind of field trip. Through these activities, students were exploring sacred spaces through making and sharing the recordings, and building upon their studies through this kind of embodied inhabitation of the landscape and architecture, its pasts and presents. So in the course, it seemed like, and again, this kind of resonates with what you were talking about a minute ago. We had this kind of study-based scholarly aspect, theory and ideas, and then we had this process of kind of going out into the world with recording devices, with ideas about how we might listen, and the students collected these experiences, made notes, and at the same time as they were forming relationships with each other. So these students had come from different countries, didn't know each other, and were trying to kind of, in the act of doing these sound walks, making these field recordings, also discuss with each other and form relationships with each other that could be creative and productive. Yeah, the students were invited to get closer to the city in this way, its wildlife, ruins, history, and musics through extended collaborative listening and recording. So that was kind of the field recording and the sound walking was kind of the first half, I suppose, of this particular creative task that they were asked to undertake. And the second half of it happened in the last couple of days of the summer school, where the students were asked to form groups, kind of like semi-formal groups that they would work in, consisting of students from different institutions, so again, working with people they didn't know, and then basically bring together the content that they had been generating and make these collaborative soundscape compositions. And through this process, the groups were encouraged to combine their recordings, their experiences, and their ideas with the theory and ideas that they've learned through the lecture series, and work together to find creative ways to synthesize all of their learning and all of their experiences of being in these spaces and thinking about them in relation to the topics. And what we found is that as many of the students had begun to establish relationships with each other and trust with each other through the week, they also started to bring their own practices and interests into this project. So people brought their creative writing practices or dance. There was audiovisual composers there, vocalists there, and the participants' own kind of music practices and interests made their way into this task of collaborative soundscape composition. And by that time in the week, we'd asked them to do a lot of things, to come to a lot of lectures, to visit a lot of sites, to perform. But towards the end of this process, we kind of put one more layer on the task of making collaborative soundscape compositions, which was to ask them to generate multi-channel work. So to produce soundscape compositions that could be presented as spatial audio soundscapes, and that could in that way kind of immerse an audience in some kind of virtual representation of their experiences of these spaces. So we provided a little bit of training for each of the groups on how to compose for and mix for multi-channel audio. I think it was a 7.1 system that we used. I kind of demonstrated here. And this enabled the groups of students to present their soundscape work as in the form of, I suppose, what we could describe as immersive audio narratives. We, in teaching this course, didn't know what they were going to make, didn't really know if it was going to work, actually. So the results that came out of it were kind of revealed to us in a final concert of this 7.1 soundscape work. From my perspective, the results were kind of diverse. The groups tended to take different approaches to doing these things, but they were also really exciting to hear and of quality. And the students were ultimately able to give a concert of collaborative soundscape work made as responses to and creative reimaginings of the sacred sites that we've visited. And the music that were kind of taking place in those sites. I'll play you a couple of examples of things that were made. These are available publicly, I think, on YouTube. But there's a couple of examples from Athens and then one from Madrid, which I thought was interesting. So these are, if my records are accurate, these are the names of the students who participated in making this piece. It's not an audio-visual piece, this is just a holding image. So it really was about the audio, and this is a stereo render of what was a 7/1 composition. So you'll see students from Tübingen, Madrid, Glasgow, Madrid again, and the next one I think was students from Stockholm and Rome in there. Let's hope this works. So yeah, that's a short part of a much longer piece, but I think you can already hear from that just the combination of music, of different kind of sonic environments and architectural spaces, and also the animal life around and the insect life kind of all coming together in these creative reimaginings of the spaces. Here's another one. 2 minutes. Okay, I'll keep with 3. 3 minutes. Oh, next one, sorry. Yeah. I'll show you a tiny bit of this. This was from the Red. This was one student's work actually in Madrid, but involved a kind of 3D modelling of a church that we were in while we were in it. So you can see bits of people in this image, and I kind of extended time stretched live vocal that was happening in the text. It's just another example of a kind of response to or reimagining of this environment we were in. So yeah, final slide. So yeah, I mean, I think this was a kind of ambitious, in retrospect, yeah, an ambitious collaborative learning model, combining multidisciplinary study with fieldwork, field recording, virtual acoustic modelling, soundscape composition, and spatial audio presentation. And through this process, the students were able to discover the city and build relationships with each other through sonic practice, while exploring tensions between the natural and the cultural, the past and the present. The final thing I want to say is I was on the plane yesterday, coming here, and I was reading this book by Natalie Lovelace called How to Make Art at the End of the World, which felt kind of timely. And on the last page of this book, Lovelace makes this kind of passionate defense of art-based learning, so learning through creative practice, and writes the following. So she says, quote, "I turn to research creation, or arts-based learning, to encourage modes of temporal and material attunement within the academy that require slowing down in a way that does not fetishize the slow, but in which slowness becomes the work of defamiliarization and the time it takes to ask questions differently. Research creation at its best has the capacity to impact our social and material conditions, not by offering more facts, differently figured, but by finding ways through aesthetic encounters and events to persuade us to care and to care differently." So for me, this kind of put me in mind of this project, because one way of maybe articulating this pedagogical model of the summer school was that it was ultimately a way of inviting the students to learn and practice new ways of caring about the environment and the city by learning and listening and making together. Thank you very much.
We could also move on to the next presentation. I'm really sorry about that, Ian, but I think we'll all have time today and tomorrow. By the way, something, okay, first of all, next presentation, it's from Daniel Brown, Natalia Kotsani, and Anastasia Georgaki, called Granular, Cicadas, and Climate Crisis.
Sorry for keeping you so late, but we're going to be very brief. Okay, okay, it's okay for me. Me, I'm just going to make an introduction. I would like to say that this ecological approach about cicadas started by myself, but after we have broadened the research team, in 2015, when I was making a lot of sound walks to the Academy of Plato with my students. And it was amazing to listen to the cicadas, and especially at the beginning and at the end. And I have realized this period that every year the period was extending. They were waking up earlier and they were dying later. And this is one of the reasons when you remark, when you listen to the sounds of their nature, you understand what happens with the climate. For example, here we are in Athens, and it's about, I don't know, 1 month and a half that it hasn't rained. We have every day it's sunny. It was not always like that. And it has rained only at the end of September, but it was very hard, like in Valencia, not like in Valencia, but it was so much water. So you understand that all these climate conditions, they affect everything that has to do with biophony in the nature. First of all, the birds and the insects. I would like to say that my first concern when I was trying to listen to the cicadas was at the beginning to write down the soundscape of the city, and concerning the Gaussian curve of the cicadas. It means when they start, when they are very loud, July and August, and when they start slowly to decrease. So it's like a Gauss curve. In the beginning, I have realized that in Athens, they don't appear immediately. But for example, the first week of June, in Athens you don't have cicadas, especially if there are trees. You must have trees, of course, in the city. But the first week of July, if you go outside of Athens, at the island of Aegina, at the island of Lesbos, at the island of Lefkadas, you listen to the cicadas. So what happens here? So they have a different behavior model depending on the ecosystem they are. And of course, if you have many trees and you don't have noises or whatever, they appear very early concerning to last periods, because last periods they were saying that summer will not come if the first cicada doesn't sound. And whatever has to do with the cicadas, it's evident in our poetry, and it's a poetry that dates from 6th century BC, I would say 8th century BC. Homer was the first who was saying a lot about cicadas. After Archilochos, Sappho, Mimermos, Ivykos, after we have all the tragic poets that speak about cicadas and all the metaphors. And in our days, all the poets have a lot of metaphors about cicadas. So it's evident in our language, in our poetry. And of course, we have different kind of cicadas than the other countries, because our cicadas are under the ground for 4 years. So they have a different sound. I'm saying all that stuff because it's very important here to see what we are going to present. I'm very lucky that I have met Daniel Brown, who is a computer music scientist, and Natalia, who is also a musician, but also PhD student at the National Technical University, with whom I tried to say how are we going to model all these behaviors and create a software that can be, from one part, a scientific software where we can reproduce some behaviors, and the other part, a creative software that we can do a lot of, if you want, soundscape compositions with the cicada. Of course, my first source of inspiration is Iannis Zannos, who was the first who was speaking about the stochastic model of the crowd and of the cicadas. And this stochastic model, you can see that is everywhere in the nature, but the cicadas really, when they sing, they start with different, if you want, frequencies, and at the end, they have a stochos, they're all together like a chorus, and they stop all together. So this is really a mysterium. We don't know how to explain. This is the reason we say about the veil. We must veil the cicadas. It's something unknown in the nature. And today we are going to speak about climate change and ecoacoustics for the beginning. And after we are going to show the software created by Daniel Brown with the help of Natalia Kotsani that is creating granular and stochastic cicadas. First of all, I would say that the title of the conference is Bioacoustics and Climate Change. And is like that because, as we said yesterday, the ecosystem is more evident for the climate change by the birds and by the insects. And here we can see that especially the insects like the cicadas that have a large body, they don't have a small body, large body. So they're bioindicators of the climate change. I have found around 6 articles that speak about that. And these articles, we have not written an article about the climate change, we must say that. We have written other articles, of course, about the stochastic modeling. But I have found articles that are from the South Korea that have a different type of cicada. There are a lot of cicadas. Even in Greece, we have 20 different species, subspecies, 20 different subspecies. And there are some subspecies that we cannot listen to them. They have very, very high frequencies. And we listen to the 20 different species that are spread around the Greek territory. And we say Cicada cretensis, Cicada leucadian from Leftos, where I So they have different types, different way of behaving, different frequencies, and different rhythms. Some of them they make zu 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 zu, but there are some cicadas that make zu 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 zu, and you wonder what's that? Another rhythm. So if you go back to mythology and ancient Greek poetry and literature, you are going to read a lot of things about this magical sound. So I would like just to say that climate change is a critical challenge for biodiversity, as it imposes shifts in geographical ranges, phenological patterns, species interactions, and might eventually result in species extinction. So now we wonder if some cicadas are going to survive or not. Maybe cicadas will survive, but birds we don't know. As a result of their conspicuous large bodies and species, we have large bodies for insects. Specific calling songs, cicadas, are promising candidates for use as bioindicator species to monitor ecological impacts of climate change. I have discussed a lot with biologists and scientists of meteorologists, and they told me this is a very promising project. We must do that, but it's a large-scale project because we must have data from at least 5 years in order to see if you have earlier or later the cicadas. Me, from my experience that I record the cicadas, I have listened the last cicada the end of October. This is like unusual. End of October, and solo cicada. Zoo, zoo, zoo. He was looking for what? Because the cicadas sing because they search for their mates. What he was doing? We must understand the nature. So just to finish my introduction, I say that the research that has been done was for a special cicada. The research has been done by Korean scientists. I will make the citation. For the cicada fuscata. Our cicada is cicada orni. Okay, and they have found out at South Korea that the phonological monitoring of cicada is an effective index to detect ecological changes due to climate change, thus indicating the importance of long-term phenological investigations for future studies. And the other is the regression analysis of the cicada fuscata song and meteorological factors in Seoul. Increasing average air temperature in spring was associated with an earlier start time of fuscata song, with calling starting approximately 3 or 4 days earlier per 1 degree of temperature. So you see here, if you ask someone, what are the cicadas? Cicadas are the nature, the temperature. The temperature, they indicate the temperature in the nature. As, for example, otoscopus is the clock of the nature. Toot, toot, so everything has its importance. And here, so I just told you some results of researches that have been done the last 2 years. There are not so many about climate change. And this is the reason it is a presentation that we're going just to present this very interesting software done by Daniel Brown and the help of Natalia Kotsani, and of course my help, in order to understand the cicadas And you're going to see that the cicadas depend. First of all, if you have trees. If you don't have trees, you don't have cicadas. You forget. Trees, and if the trees are close each other, if the trees are in distance, the geometry of the trees. Where are the trees? In a forest, or there is only two trees like in the Aegean Islands. You have two trees, you listen to the cicadas, G, 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 alone, alone, G, G, G. You don't listen to the choruses. You must have trees for the cicadas. After, when the chorus is having, when the temperatures are 35 degrees and they all together, jo, 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 and they make choruses. And after, you must see this evolutionary model, which starts in June, slowly, slowly, slowly. It rises up with the temperature. You have all these choruses all loud together around 90 decibel. And if you are in an olive tree, it could happen to be 100 decibel. This is the reason that tourists come to Greece and they leave because they cannot support the sound. And after in September, you have emptiness. You stop the choruses. And you have cicadas by their own, a little bit here, a little bit there, and after they die. So imagine that the cicadas have three phases. It's the egg, after it's the nymph, and after it's the full cicada. The nymphs go from the egg and they bury themselves for 4 years, and they come up and they live only 4 weeks. So they're 4 years under the ground and they live 4 weeks, and they come up and they have this interesting song, but we must see in which way this song indicates the climate change, because it's very well connected with the temperature. And we're going to see this very important software that has been developed by Daniel Brown, who holds a PhD in computer music science and music and AI with David Cope from the West Coast. And now he works for the IRCAM and at the University of Amiens, and Natalia Kotsani. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Anastasia, for inviting me in this amazing project and for the wonderful idea about cicadas, and Daniel about implementing this software. My part was to help in the creation of the dataset, so I would like to talk a little bit about the procedure. Cicada-only songs are made up of short chirps. They often display a behavior that is known as chorusing, which means that the phases of the chirps synchronize. Cicadas will pass from long periods of extended chorusing into periods where the chirps are not in phase, and vice versa. And they synchronize with extreme precision, varying no more than a fraction of a second from the perfect unison. This is achieved even though their collective frequency fluctuates randomly chirp by chirp. Also, there is no top-down governing mechanism making the cicadas synchronize with chirps. The chirps may facilitate the courtship between males and females. The resetting of an insect signal rhythm by its neighbor's signals may be a means of overcoming signal blocking in a crowd. Perfect synchronization could actually lead to disaster and extinction, and therefore different species in the same trophic chains may develop different circadian rhythms to enlarge the probability of survival. According to Greenfield et al., discussed cases of both synchronization and alternation in insect signals, so that it's is evolutionarily stable. According to Shepard et al., the highest forest canopy light levels increase cicadas activity, and cicadas do faster and higher amplitude chorus cycling and greater symphony of cycles across space. Also, the capacity, according to Shepard et al., the capacity to self-organize in ecology depends on environmental conditions. We collected the data. As I said, we conducted audio recordings of both individual and group cicadas in Greece. Anastasia has already created a small data set of cicadas recordings in Kea Island. I created some recordings in the Aegina Island the summer of 2021. And we observed rich variety of textures from these recordings, ranging from polyphony to unison, with heterophonic states lying between these. Also, we observed some examples of antiphonic and half-time chorusing, and many interested polyphonic and heterophonic types of behavior. For pre-processing, the white noise was filtered into two sharp peaks. The amplitude was modulated with a 500 Hz signal to produce the clicks. In Farnell's model, the envelope of a chirp is produced by amplitude modulating this filtered noise by a sinusoidal function. And this model is perhaps the simplest possible, an object that produces an infinite stream of pulses at regular intervals. At any given time, the model outputs a value between 0 and 1. And that is very good for our model. Then this value is passed to the noise stream as an amplitude modulation. In our methodology, we have three levels of stochastic behavior that characterizes the sound of the cicada chorus: a micro level, which includes the stochastic nature of a single cicada chirp defined by the probability distribution of the chirp on times and amplitude. A macro level, in that level we observe the spacing between the entrances and exits of individual cicadas and clusters of cicadas. And the chorusing, which is the synchronization of on times between cicadas singing together. The model starts with a simple cicada chirp, and then we applied stochastic transformation in three levels. In the micro level, we have the rhythm of a single cicada song. In the macro level, the entrance and exits. And in the chorusing, the integration of a mathematical model to produce the chorusing. For the bass, we have an agent that represents a single cicada and the simulation of a variable number of these agents. And we continually advance its cicada by a very small time step, producing a continuous sounding stream of amplitude. As a starting point, the construction of our model, the amplitude an agent outputs is calculated according to a sinusoidal function. Then we have the analysis of audio recordings of a single cicada chirping that shows the distribution of on times that cluster about 1 or 2 peak values. Daniel did all this analysis before implementing the final state of software. He will then demonstrate you the maximum speed project. And this distribution can be modeled as a normal distribution whose left side is truncated at 0. Even when there are 2 peaks, this is a reasonable model because they are so close together. Here you can see the entrances and exit of the observed cicadas. And then we needed a mathematical model of oscillators that influence each other. We used the Kuramoto model introduced in 1975. Its attractiveness comes from its combination of simplicity and generality, which led to be applied in many fields, including signal synchronization of insects. It does not describe an actual biological mechanism, it's just a simpler mathematical formula, but rather assumes the existence of some environmentally aware mechanism in an agent and goes on to describe the behavior of signaling within a network of such agents. It's of mathematical modeling and computational, it's very easy, I mean, to implement in programming. This is the Kuramoto formula. K is the coupling strength. Daniel will show you how K is integrated in the software. And A is the average difference between when cicada I started its last chirp and when each of its neighbors did. So we can continue with with Daniel.
Thank you, Anastasia and Natalia. I'll just give an example of what Natalia just described for you, which is the mechanisms at work in a simulation of the cicada and also a simulation of the chorusing mechanism, which we implemented with the pheromorphamon. There's a max patch, and it uses the cicada object, you can see on the left hand of the screen. The cicada object is just a low frequency oscillator with some stochastic variables that you can apply to it, first of all. And then the ability to synchronize with other low frequency oscillators. So just as a very quick example, I'm typing some pink noise through the oscillator. There's nothing really exciting about this. You can change stochastically the length of, I call it a chirp because it's modeled after the cicada. So the actual pulse, each pulse that it creates, I call it chirp. You can change the average of the length of the chirp. You can change the average of the amplitude as well. And you can change things like the length of the chirp. You can change its tendency to begin and end. So it'll enter and exit. You can change the width. These are pretty straightforward stochastic variables. What's more interesting is if I create another cicada. This one I'm going to give it, instead of pink noise, I'll give it white noise. It's going to do the same thing. But if I connect it with the first cicada, then I have the possibility of making the two cicadas listen to each other. And if they listen to each other, they can listen very well. That means they will try to chorus. They'll try to start chirping in synchrony, even though they're still chirping randomly. Or they can choose to not listen to each other. And I can actually control the likelihood, the tendency of them to listen or not listen to each other with what we call the coupling strength. This was the variable K in the formula that Natalia just showed you. Let's take a listen. Oops, one more minute. I'll pan it a little bit so you can hear the difference between the two. This is a live performance, so we'll see what happens. I hope it works. Yeah. We have two of them going, right? Yeah, we can hear two different cicadas too. And they're pretty random. So they're just two stochastically varying low frequency oscillators going at the same time. So it's noise. We can change the coupling strength. That is the tendency for them to listen to each other. And as we increase it, they start chirping together. You can see it more easily if I... They tend to chirp more together as opposed to if I decrease the coupling strength, turn it down to 0. Now they're chirping randomly. We can really hear a difference. Here they're listening to each other. And here they're not listening to each other. And we have this synchrony. First of all, it's not a top-down mechanism. I'm not sending something. These are the only objects you see on the screen. So I'm not sending something from some central mechanism that tells them when to chirp. They're chirping randomly, but they're listening to each other, trying to line up with each other. This occurs even at different chirp lengths and at different values of randomness. So here, they're chirping without any variability to their chirp length. It's pretty much a metronomic pulsation. But they'll also chirp together if they're pulsing randomly, which is pretty amazing. So more interesting things happen when you add more agents, that is more cicadas. So with 4 cicadas that are all linked together in a complete graph topology, as Anastasia said, you can change the topologies. You can imagine that some cicadas are farther away from each other. In that case, you could perhaps model this by turning the coupling strength down. That would be like saying the cicada doesn't hear the other cicadas quite as well because it's farther away. In this case, they're all listening to each other, and so we get something like this. Something that goes a little bit like this. Oh, not quite. Hold on, I have to stop. I'm not sure where. Okay. This is them not listening to each other. It looks like one of them isn't working. This is them listening to each other. We actually have one other value. So at the value 1, where the coupling strength equals 1, that's synchrony. They're all trying their best to listen to each other. At the value of 0, that's asynchrony. That is, they're not listening to each other at all. And at the value of -1, that's antisynchrony. They're actually listening to each other, trying to chirp when the others aren't chirping. And when a lot of cicadas are taking up the sonic space, you get complicated behavior. As a matter of fact, with 4 or more cicadas, it's possible to get chaotic behavior in the mathematical sense of the term. That is behavior that's completely non-deterministic. So just briefly, because that's not a very nice sound, I'm just using white noise and pink noise. I'll give you a pre-recorded version of the cicada patch. I won't play the whole thing, but just using actual. So it's more effective when we used an actual cicada sound or a simulation of a cicada sound using some filtering of noise. I'll just skip ahead. So these are like 3 clusters of cicadas that you're going to hear together. And you can hear, because of the topology, that is because of the connections between them, some of the clusters chirp together. And all 3 of the clusters sort of try to chirp together, but they don't quite make it. So we have like sort of alternating sets of synchrony that go in and out of synchrony with each other, which is really interesting, sort of multi-dimensional or hierarchical behavior. I think this is really interesting. So there's some possibilities there for maybe a scientific model or something you could use to apply use these objects to apply to studies. You could also use these ideas to feed something besides the cicada sound or white noise to them, and I've been having fun lately doing some music with them. So instead of, I've been using it, because this is very similar to granular synthesis. You feed a small bit of sound through an LFO, but you try to control that LFO stochastically. So what this is really, this cicada object is more or less like a granular synthesis object, except it has the ability to couple the streams, so the streams can actually synchronize with each other and asynchronize with each other. You get what I think is kind of interesting behavior in this sense. So just to listen to a little bit, this is using sounds of strings with it. Sorry. The other one is the other one's still playing. Not good. Just, maybe just some. Four strings and the circles represent the input. And you can use it as a granular synthesis engine by picking different bits. So what's interesting, and I have this set so that I'm randomly changing the parameters. And so the purple parameter is the coupling strength. So that changes the likelihood that they'll synchronize with each other or not. If I turn off the randomness, you can just hear at approximately 0. They're pretty random. They're not listening to each other. If I turn all their values up to 1 so that they'll be listening to each other, and if I vary between those, what's really interesting is the value in between. Because they try to line up, but they also kind of don't. So there's interesting values, and they're really subtle. I haven't really found them yet, but there's values at which you actually get chaotic behavior. You're not there yet, but it's interesting. So just to close out, another brief musical example, just a couple seconds. This is it applied to voice. So there's 6 voices here being sampled granularly, and you can hear at this point they're synchronized. In this piece, they slowly pass from synchrony to asynchrony. I thought there were some really nice textures there, and that was Natalia's voice that was being sampled. If you're interested, this is available for you can download this Mac stuff. This Mac object, excuse me. It's at danielbrownmusic.com, and that sounds like I was promoted myself, but it's available there, like Kuramoto Cicada. You're welcome to download it, and if you do, please let me know how it works and how you like using it. And of course, if there's any problems, anything you'd like to see added. Hey, thanks a lot.
Okay, thank you very much. I don't know if we should do a complete like session quick, but complete to all those that weren't asked that we asked now. I don't know if you agree. Otherwise, we have a lunch break. I mean, whatever you decide. Would you like to do like a short session of questions to everybody that weren't asked? For example, Ian was asked. I don't know. And maybe to the one that will maybe, or also to, yeah, like a, let's say it was also the room has um to go out of the room at the front, so let's do it with like 5 minutes. Yep. Good stuff.
With what you were explaining towards the end there, I find it really hard to understand how we could be listening to each other and there shouldn't be a leader, which maybe is something to do with my ideological
Say again?
programming.
I'm sorry, I didn't.
I find it hard to understand how they could be listening to each other in that act, but there isn't one dominant, like there isn't one controlling the other. So yeah, I just find it hard to wrap my head around that.
I mean, in the model, there's no dominant. It's homogeneous. The topology, so there's not one that's dominant. They're all. You can set one up that's dominant if you want to. So with each cicada, you can have it listen to another one or several others, and you can also have others listen to it.
Mm-hmm.
So depending on how you connect them, you can have one with a whole bunch of others just listening to it, and in that case, yes, it would be dominant. In this case, everyone is listening to every other one, and so there's actually none that are dominant. So it's actually pretty interesting.
Yeah, I can't imagine how that goes, but yeah.
But it actually converges to this synchronizing behavior without. That's what's pretty cool about it, is that it converges to the synchrony without there having one being dominant. I mean, I guess if you want to call it taking the lead, yes, there's a feedback loop, because the result of my listening to you is to respond, to try to line up or not line up, depending on my persuasion, with you. And so that affects what you hear and what the others hear. And they're doing the same thing, so you get the feedback loop. Yeah.
The one that you mentioned is like to the phone and start to see, and that's all the other inventions to do close to information. So this is the question here. We do know in this subject. So for the couple that's going to die, it is that you see.
Or no. I mean, you can see. So yeah, I hadn't thought about that, because what was interesting to me is like leaderless models. I guess you could call them, where it happens, where the synchrony happens regardless of leader. But you certainly could set leaders, more than one. You could set up listeners and speakers if you wanted to. Once it happens. I hadn't thought of that.
In terms of their kind of mating, so that the males are making the sound and the women are responding. Is that something you're thinking in terms of the programming, or how much is known about the cicadas in terms of how much is just? I'm wondering if you're thinking about the call and response of the cicadas. So the males are making the sound, but they're waiting for a response. Yeah, so is there any consideration kind of in the developing of a model that's thinking of that call and response within the kind of male chorus, but there's also that listening for the
No, the model itself is neutral in terms of how. Is it? Is it? Yeah, I mean, right. It's neutral in terms of just it responds. You can control it. You can control its response to impulses. But then I suppose you could. I mean, the idea was to create sort of a small neutral object that you could use to model things. So in terms of modeling larger societal structures or mating responses, the hope is that you could it has enough sort of neutral parameters that you could tweak them to actually set up a system like that with males and females based on their activity and their tendency to listen or not. Which is a cool idea. That's a really cool idea.
Thank you very much. It's very impressive to have this live performance in all the different nations which experimented with this. That the collaboration, if I understood well, with that climate change is the goal. Then for the moment you have variables that are, let's say, generative or acoustic variables. Is it the goal then to have variables that can change that we can capture humidity and things like that, so that in max MSP then you say, okay, sun, no sun, and what's going to happen? And in terms of methods, how do you plan to do it? Will it be kind of machine learning methods to like data of meteorology correlating with state recordings and then trying to generate a function?